Welcome to the Covers College Football Show. I'm your host, Jon Metler, pinch hitting for Joe Osborne today. Big Monday. We got the playoff bracket release. We got Brad Powers here. I'm sure he has no hot takes for us. Brad, what were your weekend takeaways from the playoff brackets being released, the conference championship games? You got the Notre Dame hat on. You did give out the best bet last week of that they wouldn't make the playoffs. I think around plus 300, if I got that right. What were your takeaways from this weekend?
Yeah, it was 3-1. I wish I would have waited until prior to the actual show. You probably could have gotten 20-1. Although I probably wouldn't have made that bet. I mean, that's just an information bet, and you have to respect the market. But there was no show leak, so we'll put it that way because the markets thought Notre Dame was a slam dunk to be in. We'll get to that in a second. We can have a whole question segment on Notre Dame. I want to talk what actually happened on the field and I would be remiss not to start with Indiana, who did beat me on a best bet. I had the Buckeyes. The shameful short yardage situation inside the 10 on multiple drives in the second half for Ohio State. But besides that, Indiana outclassed them. They were the better team on the field. They certainly outcoached them. Indiana was much better at the line of scrimmage than expected, held Ohio State to 58 yards rushing, the fewest in any game for Ohio State in 14 years. So kudos for Indiana for that. Let's talk Kurt Cincinnati, though. I mean, this isn't even an argument. This is the greatest turnaround in college football history. This isn't recency bias. Keep in mind, Indiana as a program lost more games than any program in the history of college football. Cignetti takes over. I've upgraded their power ratings 32 points. You're thinking, 32, not 32 spots, 32 points, meaning I would favor right now Indiana as a program 32 points on a neutral over what Cignetti took over. Also, quickly, Alabama's a shell what they were under Saban in just 2 years. I know they were playing in the SEC championship game, but are you kidding me? -3 yards rushing. They were certainly protected by the committee, to say the least. I mean, the committee didn't drop them in the rankings. And people, there's this narrative out there. Oh, you can't punish a team who lost a conference championship game. Well, the committee always punishes teams that lose conference championship games. In the last 3 years, there's been 16 teams in the top 25 of the college football playoff rankings entering a conference championship game. They lost it. 15 of the 16 dropped in the rankings, with the exception of Alabama this year. And then finally, for me, I thought it was a travesty that Duke was playing in the ACC championship game. All this argument about Notre Dame Miami would have went away, and Miami would have been playing in the ACC championship game instead of a 7-5 Duke team.
You brought up Cincinnati there. So Indiana to go all the way to the national championship, they might have to beat Oregon and Ohio State again. It's always difficult to beat a team twice. Do you think he's just such a good coach that if you put it on film, it actually might even be a bigger advantage for him to have film on Oregon or Ohio State? Or do you think I think the narrative typically leans like it'd be more difficult to beat a team twice. But do you think he's just such a good coach that now he has film on these guys?
Well, I'm not going to underestimate him ever again. I underestimated him in both the Oregon and Ohio State games. I had best bets against him both weeks. I just questioned. I saw, look, he did an unbelievable job last year, but when they had to step up in competition, they got exposed a little bit last year. Not the case this year. This year's team is, much better at the line of scrimmage. With that being said, am I thinking Indiana, the number one seed, is going to win the national championship? I'm not. I would really question their ability to beat Ohio State a second straight time. Oregon, I think, is more doable.
You tweeted out Notre Dame, one of the darkest days in their history here. Marcus Freeman, you think he might be leaving. Do you want to explain more about that tweet? Because I know you're a Notre Dame fan. You obviously have some takes there with Notre Dame not getting into the playoffs. I think you said they're the third power rated team in your rankings there. They're a team that could have won the national championship if they got in. Do you want to break down your tweet there and what you're thinking with that?
Yeah, and look, I can be emotional and biased a little bit towards Notre Dame, but what I'm not biased in is when I have to, make a power rating on the team, because obviously I'm betting my money when I'm making those power ratings. And I have number three, and I'm not the only one. Jeff Sagarin's probably the most famous, public power ratings out there. That was part of the BCS formula for 15 years. He has a number three behind Ohio State and Indiana, just like I do. So for the number three team to be left out of a 12 team playoffs is shocking, especially when they were in the rankings every single week. It's not like they lost a game. It's not like they even played a game, and yet they dropped. And then they decide to, decline a bowl bid. I'm okay with it. Everyone else seems to be up in arms. I don't know. We've had players opt out for 10 years now with more frequency with each passing year. I mean, what did you think was going to happen? Teams are going to start opting out of meaningless bowl games. The more worrisome thing for me is Freeman leaving for the NFL. He is the favorite to take the Giants job. I don't know if he takes that job, but I would be surprised if he doesn't take a job. So you lose Marcus Freeman, you're not in the bowl. It's way late in the process. This could get bad. This could be a really bad offseason for Notre Dame.
I saw you tweeted you thought the Pittsburgh Steelers. Was there a reason why you thought maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers for Marcus Freeman?
Well, I think it'd be an awesome fit there. I mean, we're talking if there's one franchise in the NFL that has kind of like a college model where they don't overreact, you're kind of safe. They've only had three coaches since the late '60s. There, the NFL, you really don't control your destiny. You don't get the right quarterback. I mean, no matter how good you are, you could be fired in a couple of years. Ask Steve Spurrier, or Urban Meyer, Nick Saban, all great college coaches. In fact, I would argue better college coaches than Marcus Freeman, and yet they couldn't cut it. It was only a couple years in the NFL for a majority of those guys. So it would have to be a specific job. I just think the Steelers, cultural wise, would fit Marcus Freeman and what he's about.
So you brought up Notre Dame third in your power ratings there. James Madison and Tulane get into the bracket,
Yeah.
and I'm just a casual college football fan, so I'm watching that. I'm like, why are we including teams that can't win the national championship? Even if they pull off one upset, they're not winning 4 games. Like they're not getting that deep into this. Like they're not going to win anything. They're not going to win the national championship. So why are we leaving out a Notre Dame who's realistically could win the national championship, putting in James Madison, Tulane? Do you think moving forward those teams should be included? To me, as a casual, I'm like, I don't. This ruined matchups for me in the first weekend. I don't really want to watch these teams play. That's my opinion. What's your opinion on it?
I love college football. I'm a proponent of the little guy. But there comes a point in time where this is about winning a national championship, not about handing participation trophies. I think in order for a G5 team to get in, they got to go undefeated. At minimum, that's a start. Or even have a resume. I was okay with Boise getting in last year. Boise, if you forget, did lose a game, but it was by 3 to the number 1 team in the country on the road against Oregon. That's a really good resume as far as I'm concerned, worthy of making that 12-team playoff. Uh, I'm okay with 1 getting in, especially we're going to expand to 16 now. But 2 getting in this year specifically, I have a major problem with it. Neither one I have in the top 30 of my power ratings, and yet they got an opportunity to play for a national championship. Meanwhile, I have 3 top 12 teams that aren't in the playoffs. Notre Dame obviously being one, Texas and Vanderbilt being the others. It's a travesty. I mean, it's nothing to do with James Madison or Tulane, but the system's broken.
It feels like there's been in the past. There's been some smaller schools who maybe could have competed. So then you've put in rules to like make sure they get in. But like you said, they need to like look at the field and be like, if they're undefeated, if they have a legitimate
These
shot to win
small
that shit.
schools can't. I mean, here's the
Yeah,
thing that they're going to realize: the small schools can't compete.
yeah.
Maybe they can win 1 game. There's no way in hell they can win 3 or 4 games. It's not happening. This isn't basketball.
Like even when you go way back, you look at like when Boise State initially took out Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl years ago. Years ago, look at all the tricks they pulled out to win 1 game. Now you're
Against
putting
an Oklahoma team that wasn't a top 5 team.
so they had all the hook and ladder, all those things to win 1 game. Now you're asking them to win 4. You're putting them into a tournament where they don't really have a chance. Like you said, you've left out 3 top 12 teams. Next question for you: the Heisman. It came down to the final weekend. You kept seeing like Julian Sayin, the Vanderbilt quarterback, and Mendoza with Indiana. They kept kind of flipping. When I was watching, I was like, Big Ten championship. Moving forward, does the do players in the Big Ten have an advantage in the Heisman market because they get that last primetime spot on Saturday? They kind of get the recency bias. And I think the big advantage here for them moving forward is that they're now probably going to have 2 top 10 teams always playing in that game, where previously it was always like a blow. You get like Purdue, Iowa, someone from the other side against Ohio State, against Michigan. Now they're getting these primetime matchups. It felt like that entire game the board is just flipping between Satan and Mendoza. It's like whoever has a good throw, they're the favorite. They have a bad throw, the next guy has a favorite. Do players in the Big Ten, do you think they have an advantage moving forward in the Heisman market because of that spot kind of in the schedule there?
Well, number one, I think it's a really sharp take. So I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. Obviously, though, I'm going to be political and say case by case basis. I mean, in some years, you might have a clear cut Heisman favorite, and it wouldn't matter what anybody did in the Big Ten championship game. It just so happened that was 1 versus 2. Both quarterbacks were among the Heisman favorites, so you were going to get some swings. But with that being said, and why I agree with your take, we live in an instant gratification society. Wild swings and opinions just on just a few plays. I mean, does Mendoza win the Heisman if he doesn't convert that third down throw at the end? Maybe not. I mean, it might go to Diego Pavia. So the reality is, and this is always the case, Heisman voters don't watch many games. They don't, even though it's their job, they don't. So they're going to watch obviously a few games at the end of the year, and they're going to overreact to just those few games. So I think there's some truth. Anytime I can tell you this, anytime we get a situation similar to what we had last week, I'll be much more attuned and need to, bet a little bit more in my portfolio because and Mendoza wins. I'm in. It's going to be a bad Heisman portfolio for me.
Yeah, he completed that deep pass on third down. Then it was like, boom, favorite. It's over. He's like minus 3,000. Like it is the market decide that was it. So like he had
Yeah,
the
one
moment
play.
on TV. Yeah, he had the moment on TV, and like that was from that game. Like you said, it was 1 versus 2. So has a little different take there. Last question for you. I saw Matt Leinart. He tweeted Texas Tech is good enough to win the national championship. I feel like they're one of the top teams I haven't heard much about at all to win the national championship, or even just much about them at all in general. What is your take on the Red Raiders? Do you feel like they caught kind of an easier path, maybe being 4-5 Oregon and Indiana on their side versus the other side, Ohio State, Georgia? What's your thoughts on the Red Raiders?
Yeah, I mean, I got them number 4, so I think they're pretty legitimate. And I can tell you where they have been legitimate in the betting markets. They're 12-1 against the spread. You got to appreciate their consistency. They've won all 12 of their wins have been by 22 points or more. So you just don't see that kind of consistency in college football anymore. With that being, I mean, they got a great defense, really good front seven. Love their front seven on defense. Probably one of the more underrated units in all of college football. With that being said, you kind of touched on it. We're not beating around the bush. Weak strength of schedule. In fact, one of the absolute weakest among the Power Four teams. So you're right. Avoiding Georgia and Ohio State, I still think Indiana and Oregon are going to be a culture shock for Texas Tech. So yeah, I'm not running the window to bet them to win it all. I don't think it's going to happen.
So do you expect to see an Indiana Oregon rematch on that side of the bracket?
Yeah, right now,
Yeah.
I would say so. That's pretty safe. Although,
Okay.
I mean, look, I mean, I have Texas Tech 4 in my power rankings and Oregon 5, so I don't think it's a slam dunk. Uh, let's see what Oregon does. Obviously, we're going to talk about that game here in a second. Let's also, it's in the Orange Bowl. I mean, so Texas Tech doesn't even get a chance to play in the Cotton Bowl, so there's really no home field advantage. And it'll come down to matchups. So I don't think it's a slam dunk, but I would expect myself to be betting Oregon there.
Okay. Let's get into the best bets. You just brought it up. Your first bet is on the Oregon Ducks minus 20.5. Do you want to break this one down?
Yeah, I'm laying it. I'm going Chalk City because I do think there's a difference. Anytime you're laying big points, it always comes down to motivation for the favorite. I think you're getting max motivation. This is the playoffs. This is an extra gear that an Oregon roster, I think, has. I was waiting. I thought they were kind of overrated for a majority of the season. I like what they did at the end of the season against SC Washington, 2 of their best wins. So they're getting healthy specifically at the skill position where they haven't been. Their offense has been playing without multiple starters. No, those guys will all be back for this one. And JMU, great season, good, group of 5 team. But the reality is they haven't faced a single top 25 team this year. The best team they faced was Louisville, lost by 14. It was a decent performance for James Madison in that one. There's a difference between Louisville and Oregon. There's a difference between going on the road, at night, Autzen Stadium, clear across the country. Couldn't be a longer trip for them. Oh, yeah, by the way, their head coach, Bob Chesney's leaving for UCLA. A little bit of distractions there. I think this one closes at least 21, so let's take advantage of it. Lay the points with Oregon.
All right. So that first bet is the Oregon Ducks minus 20.5. Your next bet is Mississippi minus 16.5. So I guess that answers my question earlier about the G5 teams getting into the bracket here. You're on Mississippi minus 16.5. You want to break this one down?
Yeah, they've already met. We already seen this one. So what a matchup. I mean, Ole Miss won 45-10. It was deserved. They outgained Tulane by nearly 300 yards. I know there's going to be some concerns. Oh, Lane Kiffin's gone. He's kind of the play caller. Well, Charlie Weiss Jr. is coming back for this one to call the plays. Pete Golding, the defensive coordinator, is the new head coach. And I think, again, let's talk motivation. When you got a big favorite, I think Ole Miss is, maybe even an angry team here. The fact that Lane Kiffin left them. So I think you do get them motivated. It'll be great atmosphere, much better than the first opportunity when you had a bunch of empty seats in the stands against Tulane. Now Tulane's even a more hostile environment. And again, similar to JMU, you got a Tulane team. Head coach is leaving for Florida. Is he 100% locked in for this game? I got to question that. Let's lay the 16.5. This one's closing at least 17.
The first time these met, I think Lane Kiffin was catching alley-oop dunks on the sideline on a basketball net. I'm pretty sure I remember seeing that video because it was a blowout. So the second bet there is Mississippi minus 16 and a half. We will leave it at that. Thank you, Brad, for your time. You will be back on Thursday.
Yeah, we'll be talking Army Navy, and we got a bowl game already on Saturday.
A bowl game on Saturday. Yes, Thursday will be Army Navy. Joe will be back. We will see you guys on Thursday.